Welcome to the Justice Lens, where we examine everything through a justice lens. And we're going to continue talking about genocide, continue talking about what's going on in the world and some of these conflicts, and talk about whether or not they rise to the level of genocide. And so today is no different. We are talking about the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine, it started in February 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. They crossed the border, started launching attacks. At the time, the president of Russia called it a strategic military operation. He didn't even want to call it a war. And they began to destroy the country of Ukraine. And since that war has begun, the question has emerged, is it a genocide? Is this war a genocide? Is Russia committing genocide against the Ukrainians? Back then, the president of the United States was President Biden. He said yes. He said, this is a genocide. We need to stop it. We need to ensure that we protect the Ukrainian people. That's what he said, right? Obviously, the president of Ukraine thought it was a genocide too. He said, Russia is trying to wipe us off the map. He didn't use those exact words. He said, trying to get rid of us, eliminate us. And with the way they're conducting this military operation, it's definitely a genocide. But what about the scholars? What about the experts, the people who do this for a living, who have seen genocides over history? What did they say? Obviously, they're more cautious. They're more precise. They're definitely more reserved when they use the word genocide. We can't just throw the word around whenever something that we don't like is happening. And so they are studying, they're examining, and trying to make a determination as to whether or not it's a genocide. And the findings are in. The reports have been written. The determination has been made by several genocide scholars, several experts, and they say, yes, Russia is committing genocide against the Ukrainian people. They say, yes, the actions of the Russian government, the Russian military, have reached the level of genocide. They say it clearly. And here at the Justice Lens, we obviously follow those experts and their opinions and their perspectives. I'm not a genocide scholar, but I'm going to go with the scholars who say that this is a genocide. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about the war, how it started, what's going on, why they're calling it a genocide, and what we can do, if anything, to end the genocide in Ukraine. Is there anything we can do? So let's get started. So the country of Ukraine came out of the Soviet Union. You know, back in the Cold War, it was the Soviet Union versus the West, right? It was a clash of these two major world powers, communism versus capitalism, Eastern values versus Western ones. Everybody liked to frame it different ways and talk about who's going to come out on top and who's going to be the one to determine how the world looks moving forward. Well, however you feel about how that war went, it ended in 1991 when the Soviet Union broke apart into a wide variety of countries. And one of those countries was Ukraine. They gained their independence and they were free to govern themselves how they choose. And from that point on, they became their own sovereign, independent country. However, there were some pro-Russia factions within Ukraine. There are some areas of Ukraine that view themselves more as Russian than Ukrainian. And in 2014, there was a revolution. There was this uprising of these pro-Russia forces against Ukraine, and they were seeking to be a part of Russia. And so in 2014, Russia came in, annexed part of Ukraine called Crimea, annexed it as part of Russia. And this was back when Obama was president. And he didn't do anything about it. Nothing at all. Are we going to rise up and defend Ukraine's territorial integrity and prevent Russia from coming in and taking part of their land and calling it theirs? Are we going to stand up and push back against Russian aggression in the region? He didn't. Now, the argument was that this area, the people who were in that area didn't mind being part of Russia anyway, and it wasn't really our place to go in and tell the people that live there what they should or shouldn't do or who they shouldn't align themselves with, and we kind of just let it go. But obviously, fast forward to 2022, Russia says, you know what? We're coming for all of it, not just part of it, not just a piece of it with people who think they're like us. We're going to go and reunify, take back what they believe was lost when the Soviet Union broke up, and take Ukraine. Just take it. And so what did they do? They launched a full-scale, all-in invasion of the country, unprovoked. Nobody said anything to them. Nobody was threatening anybody. They decided, Russia, the Russian government, decided to go in and take Ukraine. They go in, they're bombing schools, they're bombing hospitals, they're destroying infrastructure, they're marching into the capital, they're doing all of these things to assert themselves as what they would call the true owners of this land and this property. Ukrainian what? Ukrainian who? This is Russia, as far as Putin was concerned. This belongs to us, and we're taking it back, quote unquote. And so the atrocities begin. The civilians begin to get killed. The people in Ukraine rise up and they sign up for the army and they go and fight against this Russian aggression, and they're pushing back, but it's a horrible, long, treacherous war. And then civilians are fleeing. They're refugees going out from Ukraine to neighboring countries. I think reports are saying that the civilian exodus was the largest since World War II in that area. So bad. So many people just displaced, harmed, scared, fearful of what is coming from this Russian government. And Russia begins to occupy parts of Ukraine. They're setting up shops. They're moving people in. They're governing those areas under Russian governing rules, not Ukrainian, but Russian ones. And as this is happening, as we start to see this happen, we start to see evidence come out of Ukraine that this is going far beyond this military operation that was initially discussed. This looks like a genocide. This looks like an attempt from Russia to eliminate even the idea of a Ukrainian. Like, there's no such thing. It shouldn't exist. People who call themselves Ukrainian it's not even a thing in the mind of this Russian government that's coming in and taking piece by piece the country of Ukraine and putting it under their control. And so we have to ask ourselves a question. Is what Russia doing a genocide? Is it or is it not? Because if it is, there are things that people need to do to prevent it. Countries around the world have to prevent it. You can't commit genocide. It is the worst international crime that can be committed by a country. And so we ask the question. Now, just a reminder, in case you don't remember the other episodes, what is genocide? I'm going to read it to you just so we all know what genocide is as we talk about what's going on in Ukraine. So genocide can include killing members of a group, causing serious physical or mental harm to a group, deliberately creating conditions of life that are meant to destroy that group, preventing births, transferring children. The whole idea is there is this group. It could be a national group, a religious group, an ethnic group, any kind of group. You're trying to get rid of this group. That's what you're trying to do with whatever actions you're taking. It's usually killing, but it's not always just killing. It could be a lot of different things. And so the big issue with genocide, when we look at what it constitutes, is the intent, is the intention to get rid of this group, to destroy this group in whole or in part. That is the official UN definition of genocide. And so is that what we're seeing in Ukraine? Or better said, is that what we have seen in Ukraine with the way Russia's been attacking and destroying the country? And when you start to look closely at what they say and what they do, it becomes very clear that Russia is, in fact, according to the experts, according to the analysis, according to the definition, committing genocide in Ukraine. They're doing that. And so let's talk very specifically about how that's taking place. And this analysis is not mine, obviously. It is from the scholars and the experts. And I have with me this very detailed, very thorough report from New Lines Institute for Strategy and Policy in conjunction with the Raoul Wallenberg Centre for Human Rights. They did a comprehensive analysis of the actions of the Russian government in Ukraine, and this is what they determined. They say very clearly in their report, I'm going to read directly from the report now. There are reasonable grounds to believe Russia is responsible for 1. Public and direct incitement to commit genocide, and 2. A pattern of atrocities from which an inference of intent to destroy the Ukrainian national group can be drawn. And they conclude that there is a serious risk of genocide in Ukraine, triggering the legal obligation of all states to prevent genocide. And so what they're saying is, although it hasn't been litigated in the International Criminal Court, all that they've seen and all that they've heard suggests very strongly that Russia is committing genocide in Ukraine. How so? Well, they talk about the incitement to genocide. The first thing they bring up is this idea of erasing the identity of a Ukrainian altogether, that you can't even accept that there is a such thing as a Ukrainian. For instance, they say that people who call themselves Ukrainian, quote, threaten the unity of Russia and are Nazis deserving of punishment. That's what they say about people who just call themselves Ukrainian. They're saying you're denying your true identity as a Russian and you're acting like Nazis by doing that. And then they call for a denazification of the country, right? The idea that you're going to rid Ukraine, not simply of Ukrainians, but the idea of a Ukrainian, that they don't truly exist as Ukrainian, right? They describe Ukrainians as subhuman, contaminated, and the epitome of evil, and that this entire generation needs to be destroyed because they are mortal enemies to Russia. So now you're trying to tell everybody that this group of people needs to be completely destroyed, removed off the face of the earth. That's what you're saying. And so that's the incitement, right? You're ginning up this idea that this group of people are so horrible, so infested and contaminated that they need to be eliminated as a people. Not a particular group, it's not like there's a terrorist group or some type of separatist movement trying to undermine Russian sovereignty and none of that. This whole country exists and it shouldn't. That's what's being said here. That is what's happening. And so they go about the plan of getting rid of them. Because it's one thing to say it, right? People get mad. You don't like a certain group. You hate people. You say stuff all the time. That's the first part, is the intent. But then the actions that back up the intent constitute the genocide. Now we see it happening. And so what are they doing? Well, obviously they're killing civilians, killing people en masse throughout this war with no regard for who is who. Combatant, civilian, doesn't matter. They're all being taken out, all being eliminated. Why? Because it's a genocide. That's why. We're trying to get rid of these people. We don't want them around anymore. And what else are you doing? You're destroying civilian infrastructure, right? This isn't a regular war against two armies. You're destroying infrastructure. You're bombing hospitals and schools and water treatment plants. For some reason, people who commit genocide love destroying water treatment facilities. They love going after basic environmental protection and infrastructure that keeps their environments clean. You're bombing water treatment plants. You're bombing dams that are providing water. You're bombing all these places, residential areas, schools and churches, and all these places that civilians gather to live their lives. You bomb and you destroy them. Why? Because you're trying to get rid of those people. And so you're doing it on purpose to ensure that they can't survive in this country. You're creating conditions, remember the definition? Creating conditions to destroy life in the country. Because guess what? You can't live without water. You can't live without clean air. You can't live without a healthcare system to take care of you when you're sick. You can't live when the infrastructure is blown up around you. There's no roads, there's no schools, no libraries, no place to go, no place to get food. This is what's happening in Ukraine. And it's been happening for years, since 2022. Russia has been trying to eliminate Ukraine as an idea, even, not just as a people, as an idea. And as always, you have situations where when you are pillaging and genociding, the atrocities get worse and worse and worse. And so there's reports of sexual violence, gender-based violence. There's reports of forcibly transferring children from Ukraine to Russia. The International Criminal Court has put out an arrest warrant for the president of Russia for that very thing, for forcibly transferring Ukrainian children to Russia. And there are tons of articles, tons of research that show that this forcible transfer is one of the hallmarks of a genocidal state, a genocidal nation, right? The idea that you're trying to eliminate the future of a people. You're trying to, they call it re-educate. You're trying to indoctrinate these children into believing that there's something else other than what they were born as, which is Ukrainian. That's what Russia's doing. That's what's happening. It is one of the most appalling actions that a state can take, to treat children this way, to separate families, destroy generations of a group of people to try and get rid of them. And so all of these documented atrocities, all of these documented war crimes, all of these documented instances of destroying these people, these Ukrainian people, are why the experts and the scholars are calling this a genocide. It just is. There's just no way, there's no other way to describe it. It's a genocide. And so here's the question. How does it continue? How are we in a place where we can have this genocide continuing? Who's supporting Russia and enabling them to continue this genocide? Who is helping Ukraine fight against it? What are we doing? What are we doing when we see genocide happening and it just continues and continues and continues? Well, I'm from the United States. We always do things halfway. We're not the kind of people who really take strong stances for justice and for truth and for what is right. So back when Biden was president, he sent money, right? He sent money to Ukraine. He sent weapons to Ukraine. He supported them in that way to try and help them push back against Russian aggression. They put sanctions on Russia, right? In the United States and in Europe, they're sanctioning the state of Russia to try to prevent them from getting what they need to continue this genocide. That's what was happening. I think those are still in place. I'm not sure. The Ukraine-Russia war has kind of moved off the mainstream media scene, but it's still happening. There's still a genocide going on there, and it's unfortunate, but we need to do something to stop it. Now, of course, Russia has its friends. They have friends too. right? China and Russia are close allies. I'm sure there's a lot of collaboration there, a lot of assistance being given to them. Iran and Russia are close. I'm sure Iran's providing them with, whatever they can to, support them in their genocidal efforts. North Korea is there. They're close. And so I don't doubt at all that there's material support coming from North Korea. It's hard to know because nobody really knows what's going on in North Korea. It's a really closed off, insular nation. But we know that they're good friends and we know that they're working together in some capacity. And let's just be honest. People are reliant on Russian energy. They're reliant on Russian exports. And so as long as people are around the world purchasing from Russia, supporting their economy, they're enabling Russia to continue their genocidal efforts, to continue their assault on the Ukrainian people. And so that's what we have right now. We have a country in Russia who has decided that the neighboring country, Ukraine, should no longer exist. The people there are not really Ukrainian, and the land belongs to Russia and not to a free, independent nation called the Ukraine. And so he's invaded and he's trying to take it over, and it's going year after year, month after month, day after day with another atrocity, another civilian casualty, another piece of infrastructure destroyed, another element of a genocide being implemented by this Russian government. And so the last thing I'll ask is, what can we do? Can we do anything? Is it going to just happen until it stops happening? I don't know. I mean, in the United States, we had a new president in 2025 come in. He said he would end the war in Ukraine on day one in 24 hours. Hasn't quite done that. He's going to negotiate a peace deal because he has relationships with Russia and he can get Ukraine to the table and get it done. He didn't get it done. He didn't. The Europeans are trying to come to the aid of Ukraine and support them however they can. It's obviously not enough because the genocide continues. And so what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, the first thing we have to do is not be quiet. Don't be quiet. Don't be silent in the face of genocide. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you have any kind of platform at all, highlight the fact that Russia is committing genocide in Ukraine. Do it. Show the pictures. Read the statements. Show the Ukrainian resilience that's being put on display as they're being genocided by their neighbor. Don't be silent. And along with not being silent, let's also amplify the people who are reporting on this stuff. The journalists, the people who are living in Ukraine, who are all going live online trying to show us what's going on in their town, in their city, in their homes. Let's support them. Let's support the organizations that are documenting these crimes, these horrific crimes. Let's do that. We need strong humanitarian aid organizations, human rights organizations to be able to talk about what's going on there and to infuse some truth and bring light to the crimes that are being committed. And then, of course, we got to pressure our own governments. Because like I said before, there's an arrest warrant out for Putin to bring him to the International Criminal Court and charge him with the crime of genocide, which they are identifying as being shown through his forcible transfer of children. That is on the table. So every person everywhere who has an opportunity to say anything to their elected leaders, that man is a war criminal. And he should not be allowed to come anywhere near our country, anywhere near our airspace, nothing. Because the rule is, if someone's committing genocide, if someone's wanted for war crimes by the International Criminal Court, if you agree with those international laws, if your government has signed up to contribute or participate in the administration of those laws, whenever Putin shows up, he needs to be arrested, taken to The Hague. If he's trying to fly over your country to get somewhere, he can't do it. It's not allowed. It's not legal. And so we need to pressure our elected leaders to do something, to figure out how to bring justice to the Ukrainians to bring this war criminal to an international criminal court and have him prosecuted for his crimes. That's justice. That's accountability. And that is upholding what we all understand to be the human right and human dignity of the people of Ukraine. And the last thing I'll say about this too, and then, we're going to end the episode, but I don't know what, political ideology you might have. Hopefully, at the fundamental root level, you would agree with me that we can't allow people to be destroyed as a group. That every person, every group has the right to exist and to defend themselves against those who would try to remove them from the planet. We should be defending those people, no matter who they are, no matter where they are. So when someone from Russia says that the idea of being Ukrainian is somehow unacceptable and an affront to them, we have to defend the Ukrainian, defend their identity, defend their culture, defend their nation. We don't have to allow or accept some other big country's desire to eliminate them from the planet, because that would be obviously wrong. It would be immoral. It would be unjust, and it should be unacceptable to everyone, everywhere. There isn't a person, a group on the planet that should be eliminated. We are all here. We all deserve to live the lives we've chosen to live, and we all deserve an opportunity to determine for ourselves what we will be, whatever that group is. The right to self-determination. That is a fundamental right, and we should defend it no matter what, no matter where. And what you'll find, and as we talk about these different genocides happening, is that there's always a group on one side who doesn't believe that this other group should exist. Not just that they're dangerous or that we should, have some agreement so we can live together. They shouldn't exist at all. They should be gone. And we cannot allow that. And so when you put your justice lens on, make sure it's clear in that sense that we will not allow anyone, anywhere, for any reason to incite, to eliminate any group off of this planet. We're all here. We all have a right to be here, and we all should be treated with dignity, respect, and appreciation for the fact that there's so many different types of us in the world, and that our presence, all of our presence, make this world a better place. So think about that when you look at these conflicts, when you think about these wars. You think about Russia and Ukraine. Russians and Ukrainians both deserve to be living in peace and security and freedom and justice. That is what should happen. Nothing more, nothing less than absolute freedom and self-determination. That's what we should have. And so with that, I want to thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Justice Lens. Stay strong and keep fighting.